My name is Jake, and my life has always been quite measured and predictable. I worked as a sales manager in a large company, lived in a cozy house in the suburbs, and was happily married to my beloved wife, Lisa. Every morning I would wake up, have breakfast, kiss Lisa, and go to work. The day would pass in the usual routine: meetings, calls, reports. In the evening I would return home, we would have dinner, share news, and simply enjoy each other's company. On weekends we would go out of town, visit friends, or have family gatherings. Life went on as usual, without any special shocks or surprises. But one day our familiar way of life was disrupted. Steve, Lisa's father, my father-in-law, was going on a business trip for a few days. Before leaving, he asked me for a favor. "Jake, listen, I was thinking, could you check on Emily while I'm away? Otherwise she'll be bored alone. Drop by once or twice, chat," he said with a wink. I was a little surprised by this request. Usually my mother-in-law and I only saw each other at family celebrations and didn't feel any particular closeness. But it was awkward to refuse. "Of course, Steve. No problem," I nodded. "I'll look after Emily. Don't worry." My father-in-law patted me on the shoulder gratefully and started packing, and I suddenly caught myself with a strange premonition. As if this promise to visit my mother-in-law promised something unusual, exciting. How naively I reasoned then. If only I knew what it would lead to. On Saturday morning, as promised, I went to visit Emily. My mother-in-law lived on the other side of town, in an upscale neighborhood with beautiful mansions and well-manicured lawns. Her and Steve's house made an impression even against the backdrop of this luxury. 3 stories, with columns at the entrance and designer windows. A perfect lawn adorned with fancy shrubs. Everything spoke of the prosperity and love of the owners for beautiful things. I rang the doorbell and waited. A minute later, Emily appeared on the threshold, bright, smiling, always impeccably dressed and coiffed. At the sight of me, her face lit up with joy. "Jake, what a surprise! Come in quickly. What are you standing on the doorstep for?" She pulled me into the cool of the house and led me to the living room. We settled on soft couches opposite each other. Emily immediately bombarded me with questions. "Well, tell me, how are you and Lisa doing? How's work? I bet you're still working your asses off without a break." I started to answer, a little stiff at first. After all, it wasn't often that I got to chat with my mother-in-law so casually one-on-one. But gradually the conversation began to flow more freely. Emily asked about our life with Lisa, about my hobbies and plans. And she shared her own concerns, talked about some trips and meetings. Turns out she had quite a busy social life. Word by word, and an hour flew by unnoticed. I noticed that our conversation began to go beyond the usual polite chatter. Emily began to touch on more personal topics. "You know, Jake, Steve and I also had a rough patch once. We were on the verge of divorce. Can you imagine?" She lowered her voice confidentially. "It's so hard to keep the spark after so many years of marriage. But it's okay, we managed. We found a way out." Here my mother-in-law fell silent and gave me a strange, enigmatic look. It suddenly sent shivers down my spine. What does she mean by that? What way out? Before I could ask a clarifying question, Emily abruptly changed the subject. She asked if I wanted something to drink. She herself, she said, wouldn't mind having a glass of wine. I nodded automatically, happy for the opportunity to relieve the tension, and it had somehow increased in the air. The conversation was going somewhere wrong. Emily brought an opened bottle of red wine and 2 glasses from the kitchen. She poured the dark ruby liquid and handed it to me. The tart aroma made my head spin slightly. We slowly sipped the wine, continuing to chat. But now the conversation had taken an even more unusual turn. Emily suddenly started talking about her youth, about unfulfilled dreams. "And I once wanted to become an actress, you know," she said dreamily. "I applied to a theater school but didn't get enough points, so I had to choose economics, and I've regretted it all my life that I missed my chance." I looked at my mother-in-law in surprise. I never would have thought she had such ambitions. To me, she had always been exclusively Steve's wife, Lisa's mother, the perfect society lady, nothing more. "Now, of course, it's too late to change anything," Emily continued with a slight sadness. "And where would I go at my age? Although sometimes I so want to do something crazy, to kick up my heels, to do something unexpected." She looked me straight in the eye, and again a chill ran down my spine. There was something in her gaze, Inviting and dangerous at the same time. That's how women look when they know exactly what they want and are ready to go all the way. Yes, with age, you really start to appreciate vivid emotions, I replied cautiously, taking a sip of wine. After all, you only live once. You need to have time to try different things, to let a little madness into your life. My God, what am I talking about? What's with this existential nonsense? But my tongue seemed to have a life of its own, spurred on by the intoxication and the atmosphere. And Emily was staring at me without blinking, leaning forward. Exactly, Jake. You're 100% right. You can't get hung up on the mundane. You need to think about your soul, about your true desires, she whispered, almost touching my shoulder. I swallowed and involuntarily moved away. The conversation was definitely going somewhere wrong. It was time to reel in the rods and get the hell out of here. But then, Emily suddenly jumped to her feet and said with a mischievous smile, "Listen, do you want me to show you something interesting? Come on, you'll like it." And without waiting for an answer, she headed deep into the house. I had no choice but to follow her. Curiosity overpowered common sense. Oh, if only I knew where this curiosity would lead me. Emily led me to an inconspicuous door at the end of the hallway. She turned the key in the lock and made an inviting gesture. "Please, welcome to my secret room." Behind the door was a steep staircase leading to the basement. Emily started down first, and I followed her. A switch clicked, and a dim light bulb came on under the ceiling. When my eyes adjusted to the semi-darkness, I looked around and was dumbfounded. It wasn't just a basement room, it was a real den of iniquity. Antique furniture was everywhere. Massive dressers, velvet-upholstered armchairs, carved tables, paintings in heavy frames hung on the walls, judging by the plots, something from the nude classics. But most striking was the huge bed in the middle of the room, with a canopy entwined with some kind of flowers, and silk bedding shimmering in the twilight. My mouth went dry. What kind of place is this? A boudoir museum? A secret love nest? Judging by Emily's smug grin, I was close to the truth. "Well, how do you like it?" she purred, coming closer. "This is where I keep my most intimate secrets. I want to share them with you. You know how to keep secrets, don't you, Jake?" At that moment, it finally dawned on me. The moment that I had been pushing away from myself all evening, denying, not wanting to acknowledge. Emily hadn't brought me here for nothing. It wasn't for nothing that she started a conversation about crazy things and missed opportunities. Damn it, my mother-in-law was seducing me, openly and purposefully. And the worst part was that it was working. Despite the arguments of reason and the concepts of morality, I felt a flame of wild, almost animal desire ignite inside me. "Emily," I croaked, taking a step back, "we shouldn't. This is wrong. It's immoral. Think about Lisa, about Steve. We're relatives, damn it." But my mother-in-law just laughed softly. In one fluid motion, she crossed the distance between us and pressed herself against me with her whole body. "To hell with righteousness, Jake. Tonight I want to listen only to my heart, and it calls me to you," Emily whispered, burning my ear with her hot breath. And the next moment, her lips crashed into mine, greedily, demandingly, and I felt the dam of my self-control collapse with a deafening crash, shattering into small shards under the onslaught of all-consuming passion. Embracing my mother-in-law around the waist, I eagerly returned the kiss and realized there was no going back. Come what may, tonight we will enjoy the forbidden fruit to the fullest, and tomorrow we'll deal with the consequences. What happened next I remember as if in a fog. Snippets of images, flashes of sensations, the heat of Emily's body under my palms, the rustle of clothes discarded on the floor, whispers, moans, the creak of the springs of the huge bed. I think at some point I tried to come to my senses. I muttered, "No, we shouldn't. This is crazy, Emily." But my mother-in-law silenced me with kisses, and all my good intentions melted like smoke. It was something I had never experienced before. I thought of nothing but the desire to possess this woman, to take her again and again until my strength ran out, and to hell with everything, with status, morality, family ties, furiously, wildly, on the verge of madness. For a few seconds the world ceased to exist, exploding in a myriad of sparks behind my closed eyelids, and then we collapsed onto the crumpled sheets, wet, breathless, utterly exhausted. For a long time we lay in silence, trying to catch our breath and make sense of what had happened. My head was empty and hollow, my thoughts scattering like cockroaches. I felt shame and confusion take the place of euphoria. My God, what have I done? I slept with my mother-in-law, betrayed my wife and father-in-law. I stained myself with a dirty, immoral affair. How can I live with this now? What will I tell Lisa if she finds out? Emily was the first to break the silence. Propping herself up on her elbow, she looked me in the face. A strange, enigmatic half-smile played on her lips. "You know, Jake, that was amazing. You exceeded all my expectations," she purred, lightly running her finger across my chest. I frowned and pulled away. I sat up, lowering my feet off the bed. "Emily, listen. What happened between us was a mistake, a momentary loss of reason. We shouldn't have given in," I said hollowly, holding my head in my hands. My mother-in-law snorted behind me. By the sound, I realized that she had gotten up and started getting dressed. "A mistake? Maybe. But you know, I don't regret anything," she said calmly. "We're adults, Jake, and we have the right to decide for ourselves what we want out of life. And this was something real, alive." I turned around abruptly, drilling her with a darkened gaze. "So what do you think we should do now? Continue to meet in secret? Lie to our spouses? Tell me, how do we live with this further?" My voice broke into a shout. I was shaking, with anger at myself, with the powerlessness to change anything. Emily sighed and shook her head. "Jake, honey, let's not dramatize. What happened between us is wonderful, magical, but it's not love, not a passion for the ages, just a sin that we shared between the two of us. Chance, curiosity, adrenaline. No need to make a tragedy out of it." I chuckled mirthlessly. There was some truth to Emily's words. The last thing in the world I wanted was to start an affair with my own mother-in-law, to destroy my marriage, to break Lisa's heart. So maybe we really shouldn't attach too much importance to what happened? Consider it an adventure that is best forgotten as soon as possible. "What do you suggest?" I asked wearily. "I suggest keeping our secret, to leave it forever here, within the walls of this house," Emily said firmly. "We'll go back to our normal lives. You to your wife, me to my husband, and we'll act like nothing happened. Deal?" For a few moments I stared at her point blank. Emily looked completely unflappable, even serene. She knew how to quickly pull herself together. But then again, it's no surprise. She's not for nothing known as a society lioness. "Deal," I finally nodded. "You're probably right. It's better to pretend that nothing happened, for the common good." "That's great," my mother-in-law beamed. "Get dressed, Jake. I'll walk you to the door. And don't forget, you just visited poor, lonely Emily who was bored." She winked conspiratorially, and I couldn't help but smile back. Yes, who would have thought what this innocent mission would turn into? I definitely got more than I bargained for. 15 minutes later, I was already sitting in the car heading home. My head was in turmoil, my body aching with sweet languor. What had happened seemed like either a dream or the ravings of an inflamed mind. But the smell of Emily's perfume, ingrained in my skin, and the very real traces of passion on my neck and shoulders won't let me lie. This is not a dream or a delirium. This is my new reality. A reality in which I am an unfaithful husband and a lustful male who couldn't keep his crotch in his pants. Well, now I'll have to learn to live with this burden, to come to terms, to forget, to atone for my guilt before Lisa, at least mentally, and pray that my shameful secret will forever remain buried within the walls of Emily's basement. I never thought I'd say this, but long live social lies and pretense, for only they can now save what I so foolishly and recklessly destroyed. The next few days turned into hell for me. I was beside myself, tormented by guilt and remorse. I tried not to look Lisa in the eye, avoided her questions and caresses. I realized that I did not deserve her love and trust, not after betraying our family in the most vile way. Things were falling apart at work, too. I forgot about meetings, messed up with an important client. My colleagues looked at me with surprise and slight apprehension. They were probably wondering if I had gone crazy, and I myself sometimes doubted my sanity. But the worst part was that, damn, how ashamed I am to admit it. The worst part was that I missed Emily. Yes, my dear mother-in-law, damn her. I missed her sly smile, her passionate embrace. As soon as I closed my eyes, the pictures of that night flashed under my eyelids. inflamed bodies entwined on silk sheets, hoarse moans, whispers, sobs of pleasure. The sensations were so vivid that each time I was thrown into either heat or cold. How I wished I could forget it all, to erase it from my memory, to cross it out of my life. But is that possible? Memory is a cruel thing, especially when it comes to forbidden wrong memories. And I realized that I had to talk to Emily. No matter how embarrassed and awkward it was, we had to sort it all out, to dot all the I's, and not pretend that nothing had happened. Gathering my courage, I called my mother-in-law the next day. We agreed to meet at a cafe, far from prying eyes and ears. When Emily walked into the room, I caught my breath. She looked dazzling, as always. Perfectly styled hair, light makeup, an elegant pantsuit. Perfection itself, damn her. We greeted each other and placed our order. I noticed that the waiter gave us a knowing look, like, well, the lady decided to have some fun with a young lover. Inside, everything burned with humiliation and anger. Of course, from the outside, we looked like a couple of seasoned adulterers. "So, Jake," Emily began, stirring her cappuccino, "you wanted to talk. I'm listening." I sighed heavily, gathering my thoughts. How could I express everything that had been boiling up in my soul more cleverly? "Emily, listen. What happened between us then at your house? We shouldn't have done it. It's wrong, it's immoral. I feel like the last scoundrel, you know?" My mother-in-law raised her eyebrows slightly, but otherwise her face remained impassive, though I thought I saw a shadow of a smile at the corners of her mouth. Or did I imagine it? "Jake, honey, we've already discussed this. Yes, we gave in to weakness. We made a mistake. But why wring our hands and sprinkle ashes on our heads now?" she said in an even tone. "But doesn't your conscience bother you?" I exclaimed hotly. "We betrayed our spouses. Maybe you're used to this, but I—" Emily suddenly leaned forward, and her gaze turned to ice. I even felt uneasy at this unexpected transformation. "So, in your opinion, I'm used to cheating on my husband right and left?" she hissed, squinting. "What, in your eyes I'm now a cheap whore? Is that it, Jake?" I was taken aback by her sharp tone. I realized that I had said too much, offended her. Damn, how can I be such an idiot? I'm sorry, I didn't mean that," I muttered, feeling my face flush with shame. "I just wanted to say that we need to decide what to do next." Emily leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms over her chest. For a few seconds she drilled me with a searching look, then slowly said, "I suggest the following. We leave what happened in the past. We forget it as if it never happened. We go on living as usual. You with Lisa, me with Steve. Since there are no real feelings here, it won't be hard to do. And when we meet, we just tactfully avoid each other, so that there are no awkwardness or temptations. Agreed?" Her voice was calm and businesslike, and there was something very much like weariness in her eyes, as if she was damn tired of this unpleasant conversation and wanted to get it over with as soon as possible. I nodded, feeling both relief and a vague bitterness at the same time. Probably deep down, I was waiting for something else. I don't know, a declaration of love and an offer to run away together to the ends of the earth? Ha, naive fool. What were you thinking? "Agreed," I replied hoarsely. "You're right, Emily. We'd better pretend nothing happened. That would be right for everyone." My mother-in-law nodded and rose, making it clear that the conversation was over. We said goodbye politely, without handshakes or kisses, of course, and went our separate ways. I watched her go, graceful, irresistible, and I realized that I would long keep the image of this woman in my memory, the one with whom we shared one forbidden, shameful secret. And the next moment I turned around and resolutely headed home. It's time to return to reality, Jake, to your real happy life, with your beloved wife and the cares of an ordinary man. Because only that matters, right? And the affair with my mother-in-law, let it remain forever buried in the quicksand of everyday life, something that is best never to tell anyone about, even to myself. I must admit, it was not easy at first. For several weeks I was beside myself, tormented by remorse and thoughts of Emily. At night I tossed and turned without sleep, remembering those sweet, languid sensations. And when I met Lisa, I averted my eyes, feeling everything inside me clench with shame and guilt. But oddly enough, time does heal. Gradually, the sharpness of the experience faded, paled. The routine dragged me into its familiar rhythm, leaving less and less room for torment. I immersed myself in work, in family affairs. I tried to be the perfect husband, attentive, caring. I arranged romantic surprises for Lisa, took her to restaurants, gave her flowers, everything a model spouse should do. She basked in my tenderness, glowed with happiness. And I was just doing what I had to do, trying to atone for my guilt, to somehow make up for that unforgivable transgression. Emily and I hardly ever crossed paths, only on big holidays or when decorum demanded it. In public, we behaved impeccably, politely, amicably, but slightly aloof, as if there had never been that scorching spark between us, that blinding obsession. Only occasionally did I catch her long, pensive gaze on me. I saw how her eyelashes trembled when our hands accidentally touched, and I understood. She also remembers. She also carries our secret inside her, unable to completely free herself from it. But we held on. We were silent, swallowing the words that were bursting from our lips. We hid our eyes and smiled so hard that our cheekbones ached. We pretended that everything was fine, that we were just relatives, and nothing more. Once, almost a year later, I ran into Emily at the mall. We both came to buy Lisa a birthday present. We exchanged a couple of insignificant phrases, discussed what surprise to prepare for her, and as we parted, my mother-in-law suddenly squeezed my hand and whispered, "Take care of yourself, Jake, and take care of Lisa. You are my greatest treasure." There were tears in her eyes. I saw how much effort it took for her to restrain herself, not to throw herself on my neck right in the middle of the boutiques. Hell, I myself barely overcame this impulse. But we managed. We smiled at each other, sadly, understandingly, and we went our separate ways. From that day on, I finally became convinced. Our story can have no continuation. Too much is at stake. Family, vows of fidelity, the well-being of loved ones. All that cannot be risked for the sake of a fleeting passion. Of course, I haven't forgotten that night with Emily. I hardly will be able to forget it until the end of my days. But now the memories no longer burned with fire, no longer tormented my soul. They became something like a sad, aching tenderness, like a departed youth, a first love, acute, sweet, but somewhere very far away, as if in a past life. My mother-in-law and I never spoke about what happened again. And what good are words? Everything we could say to each other, we already said, in a hot whisper and moans in the basement bedroom. And now we both need to move on, to keep faith with our spouses, to build a future together, to be an example for children and grandchildren. Because that's the way it should be, right? Sometimes lying sleepless under Lisa's measured snoring, I think. And how could it have turned out? What if Emily and I had told all conventions to go to hell and risked being together? Could we, despite condemnation and sideways glances, build our little happiness? I don't know. Now no one knows. And is there any point in guessing? We made the decision ourselves, or rather, we resigned ourselves to the only decision that could save our families. I don't regret anything. After all, everyone should have their own secret in life, their own secret buried in the farthest corners of memory. And I am grateful to Emily for being my secret, albeit fleeting, albeit even shameful, but real, sincere, the kind that reminded me I'm still alive, capable of feeling, suffering, loving, and who among us has never wanted to risk something incredibly important at least once in our lives, to burn in the fire of all-consuming passion and then rise from the ashes, a little scorched but wiser? I did it. And now I can move on, carrying the memory of the woman who gave me madness for one night. My Emily, my secret weakness. After all, everyone should have their own little corner, where no outside gaze can penetrate, where you can cherish the searing, dangerous memories without fear of condemnation and misunderstanding. Cherish your secrets. They are part of you, your unique essence, stories that make your life deeper, more multifaceted. But know this. There is a time and a place for everything. And having enjoyed a sip of madness, one day you need to be able to stop in time, to put the familiar mask of respectability back on your face, and to continue living, to dream, to believe in the best, and to keep that scorchingly beautiful moment in the very depths of your heart when you could do anything, when the whole world was at your feet, even if it was just a sweet self-deception. Did you like this story? Let us know in the comments what you liked. Subscribe to our storytelling podcast. Also, don't forget to like and ring the bell so you don't miss more interesting stories. See you soon.